The upcoming speaker is MLA Ms. Leela Ahir. She has been a member of the Legislative Assembly since 2015, and after first being elected to present the constituency of Chestermere-Rockview, and more recently has been representing Chestermere-Strathmore. Ms. Ahir continues to use her background in music and entrepreneurship to support community initiatives. Throughout her previous role as the Minister of Culture, Multiculturalism, and the Status of Women over the last 2 years, she has strongly advocated for the empowerment of women through the Albertan adoption of Clare's Law and the declaration of the Women's Entrepreneurship Day. We will now invite MLA Ms. Leela here to the stage. And I'm sorry, my Punjabi is not very good, but I love to try. I'm so honored to be here with all of you. I just wanted to give, it's very difficult to follow music like that. I almost feel like we should just be silent for a moment and just absorb what we just heard. As a fellow musician, I can't help but speak just a little bit to that, and I just wanted to thank the Sikh Society of Calgary and Paji Gagandeep for inviting me to this beautiful event, and especially the education. I had no idea that I would be coming not only to learn about Guru Arjan Devji and the shaheedi gurpurab celebration, but also about all of these other impacts in the teachings, and I'm so honored, and I just feel like I've gotten so much even just from being here for a few minutes. I just wanted to connect from what Paji was just speaking about with respect to music. That physical movement of air and muscle that combines in sound is a purpose. And every single culture has music that has moved people to war and moved people to peace. And it's unbelievable the power that it has over us. And he was talking about those experiential sounds, but in all probability, music touches our souls so deeply. I think because we're born poets, and we love the color and the texture and the feeling and how that music makes us feel. And while we were sitting there listening to that rag, didn't you feel yourself go somewhere else? And you just have to remember this beautiful moment when we're in this room together, experiencing that together, and the sounds and the patterns that are natural in that music, and it enhances our lives so much. So he already spoke so beautifully to this. I don't want to speak, but as a fellow musician, and my training is actually in Western classical music. And so our scripts or our scores, as he was speaking about it, are quite planned. But we do have abilities to maneuver and change our tone and our sound throughout our music. But again, just so touched to be part of this. I wanted to just share one more small thing. Thank you so much to this beautiful community. Thank you for embracing me. Thank you for bringing me into your families and into your homes. We have celebrated many things together. We've also lost family and friends. We've been through years where we haven't been able to see each other, to make music like we just did, to be able to share in this, to share in faith, and the deeper meaning of all of the reasons why we're all here. And for you to understand how deeply important the privilege to serve you, but to the growth of our province, and the contributions that everyone has made, especially when you have left a homeland that you understood and loved, and came here and started a new life for yourselves and your children, and in order to grow Alberta, because you are Alberta, 100%. You're my family. My father came from India in 1963 and became a chemical engineer. He used to drag me out to those fields all the time. And I didn't think it would have an impact on me until I was older and understood how much my dad just wanted me to get what he was doing and to meet the people that he was impacting. And he fell in love with Alberta, but Alberta loves all of you. And thank you so much for everything you do with your families and your businesses and your charities and your non-for-profits and organizations that continue to build this beautiful province that we're all part of. It actually makes me very emotional. Thank you for creating this strong sense of community and for the seva that you bring to all of us so that we can share not only in the beautiful culture and traditions that you bring to all of us, but it's deeper than that. We learn about each other. We understand differently. we open our minds to new ideas and new spaces, and I'm truly honored to be part of this family and to have joined you here today. Thank you so much for having me. Thank you.
Thank you so much, MLA here. It was really heartwarming to listen to your experiences, and I would now like to take this opportunity to welcome the committee on stage to present you with a plaque of honor, as well as a plaque of honor for MLA Devinder Toor, if he is in the audience. He just left. Okay, no worries. To invite the Executive Committee of Gurdwara Dashmesh Culture Centre up on stage to be honoured with our plaque as well. The Executive Committee, consisting of President Namanpreet Singh Gill and Harjit Singh have been instrumental in their support for various projects for the Sikh community, the youth in the city, as well as the Nagar Keertanee. That was a fantastic success just a couple weeks ago. So we'd like to honour the committee as well at this point.
I was in my mind that to keep the most colorful and tasty things to the last, but somehow it comes in the between, you know. And the Smash Culture Center is the kind of a community they build not only in Calgary but around the whole, I will say in the North America. They set so many examples, so many milestones, helping the peoples all the way to that Grand Prairie during the fire, and also helping when there was a freedom protesters up on the borders, and the flooding in the BC, and even the local during that pandemic time. They provide the foods to the thousands and thousands of peoples, and I don't have any wording to appreciate their efforts, things like that. They gave us so much strength, they gave us so much help to organize this program. Thank you very much.
And before the President leaves the stage, if I could ask Mr. Gill to please speak with the Sangat for 2 minutes.
ਵਾਹਿਗੁਰੂ ਜੀ ਕਾ ਖਾਲਸਾ ਵਾਹਿਗੁਰੂ ਜੀ ਕੀ ਫਤਿਹ। ਪਹਿਲਾਂ ਤਾਂ ਸਾਰੀ ਕਮੇਟੀ ਸਿੱਖ ਸੁਸਾਇਟੀ ਦੀ ਵਧਾਈ ਦੀ ਪਾਤਰ ਹੈ ਜੋ ਉਹਨਾਂ ਨੇ ਬਹੁਤ ਸੋਹਣਾ ਪ੍ਰੋਗਰਾਮ ਪੰਜਵੇਂ ਪਾਤਸ਼ਾਹ ਸ਼੍ਰੀ ਗੁਰੂ ਅਰਜਨ ਦੇਵ ਜੀ ਸ਼ਹੀਦੀ ਪੁਰਬ ਨੂੰ ਸਮਾਪਤ ਇੱਥੇ ਰੱਖਿਆ, ਕਿਉਂਕਿ ਜੋ ਉਸ ਵੇਲੇ ਦੀਆਂ ਗੱਲਾਂ ਸੀ ਅੱਜ ਵੀ ਉਹੀ ਆ। ਗੁਰੂ ਸਾਹਿਬ ਦੀ ਸ਼ਹੀਦੀ ਵੀ ਜਿਹੜੀ ਸ਼ਹਾਦਤ ਆ ਉਹ ਵੀ ਰਿਲੀਜੀਅਸ ਆਫ ਫਰੀडम ਇੰਟੋਲਰੈਂਸ ਦੇ ਲਈ ਸੀ, ਤੇ ਅੱਜ ਵੀ ਜੇ ਦੇਖਦੇ ਇੰਡੀਆ ਦੇ ਵਿੱਚ ਸਟਿਲ ਸਟਰਗਲ ਚੱਲ ਰਹੀ ਹੈ। ਪਰ ਆਪਣੇ ਕੋਲ ਇੱਥੇ ਐਡਾ ਵਧੀਆ ਮੌਕਾ ਵਾ, ਆਪਾਂ ਇੱਥੇ ਸਿੱਖੀ ਨੂੰ ਬਹੁਤ ਚੰਗੀ ਤਰ੍ਹਾਂ ਪ੍ਰਫੁੱਲਿਤ ਕਰ ਸਕਦੇ ਹਾਂ ਜੇ ਕਮਿਊਨਿਟੀ ਸਾਰੀ ਰਲ ਕੇ ਚੱਲੇ। ਸੋ ਅੰਕਲ ਜੀ ਦਾ ਬਹੁਤ ਬਹੁਤ ਧੰਨਵਾਦ, ਨਿਹਾਲ ਸਿੰਘ ਢਿੱਲੋਂ, ਸਾਰੀ ਹੀ ਟੀਮ ਦਾ। ਜਦੋਂ ਵੀ ਕੋਈ ਉਪਰਾਲਾ ਕਰਦੇ ਜਾਂ ਅਸੀਂ ਕਰਦੇ ਇਹਨਾਂ ਨੂੰ ਆਵਾਜ਼ ਮਾਰੀ, ਹਮੇਸ਼ਾ ਸਾਡੇ ਨਾਲ ਚੱਲਦੇ ਆ। ਇਹੀ ਗੁਰੂ ਸਾਹਿਬ ਦਾ ਸੰਦੇਸ਼ ਹੈ, ਜੇ ਅਸੀਂ ਆਪਸ 'ਚ ਪਿਆਰ ਨਾਲ ਰਵਾਂਗੇ ਤਾਂ ਹੀ ਆਪਾਂ ਕੁਛ ਨਾ ਕੁਛ ਅੱਗੇ ਆਪਣੀ ਕਮਿਊਨਿਟੀ ਨੂੰ ਲੈ ਕੇ ਜਾ ਸਕਾਂਗੇ। ਤੇ ਜਿਹੜੀ ਆਪਾਂ ਹਮੇਸ਼ਾ ਇੰਡੀਆ 'ਚ ਗੱਲ ਕਰਦੇ ਹਾਂ, ਉੱਥੇ ਤਾਂ ਆਪਣੇ 'ਤੇ ਬਹੁਤ ਪ੍ਰੈਸ਼ਰ ਆ, ਇੱਥੇ ਪ੍ਰੈਸ਼ਰ ਡਿਫਰੈਂਟ ਤਰੀਕੇ ਦਾ, ਪਰ ਆਪਣੇ ਕੋਲੇ ਕਮਿਊਨਿਟੀ ਕੋਲੇ ਇੰਨੀ ਸਟਰੈਂਥ ਹੈਗੀ ਆ ਵੀ ਆਪਾਂ ਬਹੁਤ ਕੁਛ ਕਰਨ ਦੇ ਕੇਪੇਬਲ ਆ। ਸਤਿਗੁਰ ਨੇ ਇੰਨੀ ਬਖਸ਼ਿਸ਼ ਕੀਤੀ ਹੈ, ਜਿਵੇਂ ਢਿੱਲੋਂ ਸਾਹਿਬ ਨੇ ਕਿਹਾ, ਉਹ ਗੁਰੂ ਸਾਹਿਬ ਨੇ ਆਪ ਹੀ ਕਾਰਜ ਕਰਾਏ ਜਿਹੜੇ ਸਾਂਝੀਵਾਲਤਾ ਦੇ ਉਪਦੇਸ਼ ਸੀਗੇ, ਜਿਹੜੇ ਸਾਡੇ ਨਿਸ਼ਾਨ ਝੁਲਦੇ ਨੇ। ਹਮੇਸ਼ਾ ਅਸੀਂ ਤਤਪਰਾਂ ਪੈਂਡੈਮਿਕ ਦੇ ਵਿੱਚ ਅਸੀਂ ਬੰਦ ਨਹੀਂ ਹੋ ਕੇ ਬਹਿਣਾ ਸੀ। ਉਦੋਂ ਹੀ ਟਾਈਮ ਸੀਗਾ ਗੁਰਦੁਆਰਾ ਸਾਹਿਬਾਂ ਕੋਲੇ ਅਸੀਂ ਅੱਗੇ ਆ ਕੇ ਦੱਸਣਾ ਵੀ ਸਾਡੀ ਕੌਮ ਦੇ ਵਿੱਚ ਕਿਹੜਾ ਜਜ਼ਬਾ ਜਿਹੜਾ ਸਾਨੂੰ ਖਿੱਚੀ ਫਿਰਦਾ, ਕਿਹੜੀ ਡਰਾਈਵ ਆ ਜਿਹੜੀ ਗੁਰੂ ਸਾਹਿਬ ਤੋਂ ਤੁਰੀ ਆਉਂਦੀ ਆ, ਜਿਹੜੀ ਇਹ ਕੌਮ ਹਰੇਕ ਪਾਸੇ ਜਾ ਕੇ ਨਾਰਥ ਅਮਰੀਕਾ, ਯੂਰਪ, ਜਿੱਥੇ ਵੀ ਜਾਂਦੇ ਆ, ਹਮੇਸ਼ਾ ਕਮਿਊਨਿਟੀ ਦੀ ਸੇਵਾ ਦੇ ਲਈ, ਕਿਸੇ ਇੱਕ ਦੇ ਲਈ ਨਹੀਂ, ਸਭ ਸਾਂਝੀਵਾਲਤਾ ਦੇ ਲਈ ਅੱਗੇ ਆਉਂਦੇ ਆ ਤੇ ਆਉਂਦੇ ਰਹਾਂਗੇ। ਸੋ ਇੱਧਰੋਂ ਗੁਰਦੁਆਰਾ ਸਾਹਿਬ ਤੋਂ ਵੀ ਸਾਨੂੰ ਭਾਈ ਸਾਹਿਬ ਨੇ, ਇੱਧਰੋਂ ਤੁਹਾਡੀ ਕਮੇਟੀ ਵੱਲੋਂ ਫਾਈਨੈਂਸ਼ੀਅਲ ਸਪੋਰਟ ਵੀ ਕੀਤੀ ਜਦੋਂ ਵੂਮਨ ਟ੍ਰਾਂਜੈਕਸ਼ਨ ਹਾਊਸਿੰਗ ਦਾ ਪ੍ਰੋਜੈਕਟ ਆਇਆ ਮਾਤਾ ਸਾਹਿਬ ਕੌਰ ਜੀ ਦੇ ਨਾਂ 'ਤੇ, ਉਹਦੇ ਲਈ ਵੀ। ਸੋ ਬਹੁਤ ਹੀ ਪਿਆਰ ਤੇ ਇਤਫਾਕ ਇੱਥੋਂ ਹੀ ਪਤਾ ਲੱਗਦਾ ਵੀ ਜੋ ਸਾਡਾ ਸਿੱਖੀ ਦਾ ਬੂਟਾ ਕੈਲਗਰੀ ਦੇ ਵਿੱਚ ਕਿੰਨਾ ਹਰਿਆ ਭਰਿਆ ਵਾ, ਪ੍ਰਫੁੱਲਤ ਹੋ ਰਿਹਾ ਵਾ। ਧੰਨਵਾਦ ਸਾਰੀ ਹੀ ਕਮੇਟੀ ਦਾ, ਸਾਡੀ ਦਸ਼ਮੇਸ਼ ਕਲਚਰ ਸੈਂਟਰ ਦੀ ਸਾਰੀ ਹੀ ਟੀਮ ਵੱਲੋਂ। ਵਾਹਿਗੁਰੂ ਜੀ ਕਾ ਖਾਲਸਾ, ਵਾਹਿਗੁਰੂ ਜੀ ਕੀ ਫਤਿਹ।
Next, I'd like to invite Dr. Marika Cassis to the stage. She has played an active role in the research and academic teaching community through her contributions in the field of archaeology and medieval history. Some of the courses taught at the University of Calgary by Dr. Cassis include topics in late antiquity and advanced Greek and Roman studies. Dr. Kass's work has also been central in the ongoing initiative to create a Sikh Studies program at the University of Calgary. Please welcome Dr. Kass to the stage.
I've got my list of things because I have so many things to say, but I want to start by saying that those of you who I've met and have spent time with probably know that I'm a little bit in love with this community. It has been, for me, one of the greatest things about moving to Calgary and starting at the University of Calgary 3.5 years ago. Some of the clearest things for me have been the immediate outpouring of support from the Sikh students who came to me right away and said, we want to do this. And so from that point forward, one of the first things I remember is within a month of starting, sitting in the library, arguing when I should have been doing paperwork, arguing with Dr. Grewal. So it has been a pleasure to work with this community. Sikh Studies in the context of the university is about bringing to a larger audience Sikh tradition, culture, and thought, and its application to all aspects of our modern society. It is one of the most humanistic disciplines, and in getting to know the community, I've seen just how much it is applied to everyday life and to all aspects of our community. So we have a really wonderful opportunity to create something positive, productive, and innovative, to bring Sikh Studies to the wider student body, and to support our Sikh community. And as the child of a Greek-Egyptian immigrant, I am so proud to see a community in Alberta coming together to create something like this. And so we want to keep developing that. And so I want to just talk for a couple of minutes about how we intend to bring this forward and to keep working on it. One of the things when you're the head of a religious studies department is people often say to me, well, it's about teaching people how to be a Christian or how to be a Sikh or how to be Jewish. And when we get people to understand that it is the academic and intellectual study of religion, their minds are open to the fact that religion is part of all of our societies and that it is integral to how we live our lives. And so it's a really important thing for me to see a group as visible and important to the history of Alberta coming together and for us to be able to work with you to create a program. So over the next few years with our new hire in Sikh Studies, we'll be advancing course offerings. So right now we have 2 courses. In the next few years we'll have many more. And we will also be starting something very exciting with the postdoc that Dr. Sigurdson talked about, because the creation of the postdoc is about creating new research and creating new research trajectories. So postdocs are like newly minted doctorates who will then take the support they get from our university and go out into other universities. So it's going to be a really amazing experience. And the postdoc that we've hired, who I cannot yet announce, is not going to be just studying the history, but really is going to be talking about the connection of Sikhism to the wider educational world. So we're very, very excited to have that person starting. The department has 2 other endowed chairs, and so we're hoping in the next few years to be able to build this. I'm a Greek, so I wave my hands around a lot. To build the endowment, to keep this going as a permanent thing. We have 4 years now with no concerns, and so the endowment will help to keep this as a permanent part of the University of Calgary. The faculty and the department are 100% behind keeping that, and we have the expertise to keep the endowment moving towards an endowed chair. And so that is ultimately our hope, because an endowed chair can allow us to continue growing the graduate program in Sikh Studies with MA students, PhD students, and further postdoctoral studies. So this is where we're at right now, and I have to say it has been an absolute honor for me to work with the community, to work with all of you, and especially to work with our amazing students at the University of Calgary. We are fitting into not just the community narrative, but the narrative of all of the programs at the university, pluralism, equity, diversity and inclusion, and global citizenship. And for me, as the child of an immigrant myself in this province, this is everything. Thank you very much for everything. And I always end with this, but I want people to understand that this is true. At any point, if you have any questions about the program, anything that I can answer, my email is on the website, and I'm happy to chat with anybody about the programs. Thank you very much for having me today on this very important day.
Thank you so much, Dr. Cassis, for your words. We are excited to see the progress made on the Sikh Studies program. We're so ecstatic that we have such academics working on the project. On that note, I would like to invite members of the Executive Committee of Sikh Society of Calgary to come on stage and present Dr. Cassis with a plaque of honor. I'd now like to move the program forward. It's now my pleasure to invite to the stage Dr. Surjit Singh Bhatti. Dr. Bhatti is an accomplished physicist and now as a retired professor head of applied physics and professor and head of applied physics at Guru Nanak Dev University, Punjab. Dr. Bhatti has spent the last almost 2 decades of his career creating robust engineering and physics programs all across India, notably at Badu Sahib, where he spearheaded the initiative to create a new engineering and physics program for the students at Badu Sahib University. Now Dr. Bhatti spends his time working on making science accessible for the younger generation, specifically working on ways to make Gurbani and the scientific concepts of Gurbani more accessible and easy to understand for the younger generation through different podcasts, articles, and research works. So I'd like to invite Dr. Bhatti on stage, who will present 3 facts, 3 big pillars regarding Guru Arjan Dev Ji Maharaj.
Vaheguru Ji ka Khalsa, Vaheguru Ji ki Fateh. I will be speaking to you. Some unique points are important because they distinguish the personality and the contributions of Guru Arjan Dev Ji Maharaj from the rest of the world, leaders, saints, ascetics, and so on. Now, each Guru had his own specific multidimensional contributions. But when you talk of Guru Arjan Dev Ji, the first thing that I am reminded of and I want to share with you is his unique humility. I don't want to narrate the whole history, but you have already studied and come across these things, and I assume that you know it already, that his elder brother, Pirthi, when he came to know that their father is going to bequeath the Guruship or to the younger son, therefore obviously he was very jealous and he did not have done. You know this story, I would not repeat. In fact, he went to the extent of getting the Guru and his son killed. Now that was something unheard of in the annals of history. And that incidentally reminds me of another sad fact of today's life. When we see what is happening in the world today, particularly among the Sikhs, we sometimes feel sad that the Sikhs are fighting among themselves for certain coveted positions. That makes us sad today. That's what it should not be. But if you look back into history, particularly that of Guru Arjan Dev Ji Maharaj, you will find that his own real elder brother, he tried to get the Guru's son killed by many ways. Of course, he did not succeed. And Guru Arjan Dev in his Gurbani gives the credit of this to Almighty, to Guru. Now that's one thing I wanted to bring to your notice. But in spite of all that cruelty and other things, the Guru was kind-hearted. He was humble. And he did not use a harsh word for his brother. He did not speak against his brother, and he was so humble that he tolerated everything which any one of us in similar circumstances would not have tolerated. I understand if any of us were put in that position, we could have tolerated it once or twice, but not as many times as the Guru did. Our tolerance has a limit, but the Guru had indefatigable, endless humility and limit. And there was no limit to his humility. Now that's one very unique point I wanted to bring to your notice offhand when I came here and I was asked to speak. Another thing I want to add is the story of Satta and Balwan, the two famous musicians in his court. Prithi instigated him against the Guru, and he said that his earnings or the Sanghat's offerings, they are because of your music, and you should have a higher share of the offerings before the Guru. The greedy gentlemen, they went home and they never came back to sing. Now look at this. If I have a subordinate and he does this sort of a thing with me, I will never go to him and say, you please come back. I will not say that. You will not do that. But look at the humility of Guru Arjan. He went to the residence of Satta and Balwan and he entreated them, he requested them, please come and recite the divine music in Darbar Sahib. Now that is another example of his humility. And what did he gain in lieu of this humility? There was a great gain for the Sikh cause. I will explain just now. When Satta and Balwan did not come, at that time Guru Sahib asked the Sangat, let us all sit together and recite Gurbani. We may not be in tune, we may not be according to a musical rag or something in the beginning. But once you start, in a few days you will learn. And that is how the Sangat began to recite music, and that was another gift, a great gift which the fifth Guru gave to the Sikhs. And the words Kar Kar Andar Dharamsal, Hove Kirtan, that was proved to be right. Today, most of us who have the Holy Guru Granth Sahib in our homes, or even without that, we can sing Gurbani, even if we are not experts. Here is a gentleman who knows so much that we don't know anything of what music is. But our devotion makes the singing perfect. The Guru will forgive us if our singing is not perfect, because we have devotion and love in our mind. Now that was a day when the priestly class was outclassed. We don't need the priests in Sikhism, although to maintain gurdwaras and so on is okay. We do need. But we don't depend upon the priests all the time. Just as in a temple, a pandit is required. In a masjid you require an imam. But here we don't necessarily need a priest. A pai is not necessary because every Sikh can recite Gurbani with or without an instrument. Some may know more as you do, and you put it so beautifully. Now that was the advantage and the gift which his unique humility gave us. Second point is the creation of a unique institution. People have been creating institutions, and those institutions, I'm sorry to say, are just buildings. People go, they bow themselves, sit there for some time and then come back. But nobody is attuned to the spirit of that institution. The Sikhs are the only people in the world who are emotionally attuned and attached to the Darbar Sahib, which was created by the Guru, and it is unique, unparalleled in the history of the world. Neither before nor afterwards was ever an institution of that devotional attraction was ever created. The next I want to talk is the unique scripture. I am talking only of the unique aspects. Others, the lady and gentlemen, they have read very ably. Now this scripture, I believe, is the first step towards the concept of interfaith communication. Now we talk today of interfaith. We say bring different religions, people of different faiths together and try to remove the misunderstandings or the lack of understanding between them. That is the idea of the interfaith concept. But I dare say that Guru Granth Sahib is the first ever scripture in the history of the world where the concept of interfaith was integrated. And what was that concept? You had people who were Muslims, saints, there were others who were Hindu saints, and still others, people who were considered to be of a very low caste. There is no such thing as low and high, but at that time, this is how it looked. Guru Sahib brought them together, thereby which conformed to the philosophy of the Gurus, that was accepted, the rest of it was rejected, and an interfaith dialogue was established. Now what we talk today is an interfaith communion between different faiths and religions and people, very good. But I am sure it started with the scripture which Guru Arjan Sahib created. It does not have any story. It doesn't have any story of a king or queen. It does not have a description of a war like Mahabharata. It does not do anything else except that it teaches us what we should not do. What are the 5 cardinal sins? Kam, Krodh, etc. And what are other sins? Ninda and other things. So it teaches us what not to do. And then it also teaches us what to do. So it's a storehouse, it's an ocean of spiritual as well as temporal knowledge. I use this word temporal because as a student of science, the more I read Gurbani deeply, I realized that most of the things which we are discovering now as scientists, they were already mentioned in Guru Granth Sahib. And I can talk about that for hours and hours, but I will not. Now, what it means is that Guru Granth Sahib is scientific document. It is not a blind faith or tradition-laden book where you read stories or you do things like that. It puts you in direct contact with, as somebody said, direct contact with the Guru and of course with God. And if you don't know what is God, which I don't know really, then what you should do for other human beings? Seva. That service which we do for others, that is the path which Guru Granth Sahib shows us. It doesn't talk of any, you see, God or goddess sitting here or there. We don't talk of that. We talk of spirituality, and Guru Granth Sahib tells us how to be in communion with that spiritual power, whatever you might call it. Then I will talk briefly about the protection of human rights. The United Nations started this by the end of the two wars, when human rights were grossly violated. But Guru Arjan Dev gave his life for what? Not for any territory, not for wealth, not for anything else. He gave his life, sacrificed himself to uphold the dignity of the human rights. It's the right of a human being to practice the religious faith in which he or she believes. Now, I look at the martyrdom as the first step towards the protection of human rights. And this was again taken up by Guru Tegh Bahadur. So I believe these were some of the points I could note down. Why do we have
Vaheguru Ji Ka Khalsa, Vaheguru Ji Ki Fateh. I would just like to mention that Govt is taking place outside for any of those who want to go and check that out. Our next speaker is Dr. Satwinder Bains, who is the director of the South Asian Studies Institute at the University of the Fraser Valley and an associate professor in Culture, Media and Society Studies, College of Arts. Dr. Bains' critical analysis of India's multilingual policy and planning has fueled her interest to study the impact of language, culture, and identity on South Asian Canadian migration, settlement, and integration. Her research includes the intersex cross-cultural education with a focus on anti-racist curriculum implementations, race, racism and ethnicity, identity politics, Sikh feminist ideology, migration, and the South Asian Canadian diaspora and Punjabi Canadian cultural historiography. Dr. Bains has been widely recognized for her work in South Asian studies as a researcher, scholar, and mentor. Please welcome Dr. Satwinder Bains.
ਵਾਹਿਗੁਰੂ ਜੀ ਕਾ ਖਾਲਸਾ ਵਾਹਿਗੁਰੂ ਜੀ ਕੀ ਫਤਿਹ ਪਹਿਲਾਂ ਤਾਂ ਸਾਰਿਆਂ ਦਾ ਧੰਨਵਾਦ ਕਿ ਤੁਸੀਂ ਇੱਥੇ ਬੈਠੇ ਹੋ ਕਿੰਨੇ ਘੰਟੇ ਹੋ ਗਏ ਨੇ ਸੋ ਥੈਂਕ ਯੂ ਤੁਹਾਡਾ ਬਹੁਤ ਬਹੁਤ ਤੇ ਸਿੱਖ ਕਲਚਰਲ ਸੁਸਾਇਟੀ ਦਾ ਧੰਨਵਾਦ ਜੀ ਕਿ ਤੁਸੀਂ ਸਾਨੂੰ ਇੰਨੀ ਦੂਰੋਂ ਲੈ ਕੇ ਆਏ ਆ ਸੋ ਬ੍ਰਿਟਿਸ਼ ਕੰਬੀਆ ਤੋਂ ਤੁਹਾਨੂੰ ਮੈਂ I welcome you I bring you greetings from British Columbia. I want to start by acknowledging that I'm a visitor to this territory. I come from the people of the Stolo, the people of the river. They speak Halkamela, and the Fraser River, the Stolo River, is our main artery, feeds us as well as transports us. And I'm a visitor to this territory, the Blackfoot Confederacy and the Métis Nation of Alberta Region 3. and the traditional territory of the Nitsitapi or Treaty 7. I thank you for inviting me to this community. आज ਅਸੀਂ ਗੁਰੂ ਅਰਜਨ ਦੇਵ ਜੀ ਦੇ ਸ਼ਹੀਦੀ ਗੁਰਪੁਰਬ ਮਨਾ ਰਹੇ ਹਾਂ ਤੇ ਗੁਰੂਆਂ ਨੇ ਜੋ ਸਾਰਿਆਂ ਨੇ ਕਿਹਾ ਉਹਨਾਂ ਦੀ ਬਹੁਤ ਵੱਡੀ ਦੇਣ ਹੈ ਤੇ ਉਹਨਾਂ ਦੀ ਸ਼ਹਾਦਤ ਉਹਨਾਂ ਦੀ ਜ਼ਿੰਦਗੀ ਅੱਜ ਸਾਨੂੰ ਸਾਰਿਆਂ ਨੂੰ ਇੱਥੇ ਖੜੀ ਕਰਦੀ ਹੈ ਸੋ ਉਹਨਾਂ ਦਾ ਧੰਨਵਾਦ ਤੇ ਮੈਂ ਗਗਨਦੀਪ ਸਿੰਘ ਇਜ਼ਰ ਨੂੰ ਥੈਂਕ ਯੂ ਕਰਨਾ ਚਾਹੁੰਦੀ ਹਾਂ ਪਤਾ ਨਹੀਂ ਕਿੱਥੇ ਨੇ ਪਰ ਉਹਨਾਂ ਦੇ ਗਗਨਦੀਪ ਸਿੰਘ ਜੀ ਥੈਂਕ ਯੂ ਸੋ ਮਚ ਉਹਨਾਂ ਦੇ ਫੋਨ ਕਾਲਸ ਈਮੇਲਸ ਉਹਨਾਂ ਨੇ ਸਾਰਾ ਕੁਝ ਅਰੇਂਜ ਕੀਤਾ ਤੇ ਤੁਹਾਡਾ ਸਾਰਿਆਂ ਦਾ ਧੰਨਵਾਦ ਕਰਦੀ ਹਾਂ Harjit, I know your dean and your head of department are gone, but I was hoping to tell them that congratulations on the work you're doing in Alberta, and BC is behind you. ਅਸੀਂ ਵੀ ਇਹਨਾਂ ਰਾਹਾਂ ਵਿੱਚੋਂ ਲੰਘੇ ਹਾਂ ਕਈ ਕੰਢੇ ਆ ਰਾਹ ਦੇ ਵਿੱਚ ਸੋ ਉਹਨਾਂ ਦਾ ਖਿਆਲ ਰੱਖਣਾ ਪਰ ਅਸੀਂ ਤੁਹਾਡੇ ਨਾਲ ਹਾਂ ਤੇ ਜਿੱਦਾਂ watch the thorns that we're with you and we'll walk with you as you take this journey and I wish you many good wishes to the University of Calgary to take on this study and I know we will all benefit from it. So today I'm going to share with you some of my thoughts and ideas about Sikhi's extension and extending work towards the feminine within Gurbani, within Tabarik, our literary history, and within Rehet, our lifestyle. So I'm supposed to press right?
Right, that's right.
Okay. So I really wanted to suggest that Sikh feminism has not been fully theorized, and although its critical goal has been to decenter the notion of normatively and androcentric hermeneutics, and really to understand the theory and practice of interpretation, and where interpretation involves an understanding that can be justified. I think that to me is the critical point, and especially in this context, the interpretation of the Sri Guru Granth Sahib and the texts that are associated with them. What is particularly important that this practice of interpretation includes the art of understanding, of communication, and meanings that can be influenced by the vicissitudes of our social life. Today in this gathering, I want to re-raise the textual and practical meanings that serve a Sikh thought and understanding. Sikh American feminist scholar Nikki Guninder Singh has suggested that, and I quote, there is a lack of feminist hermeneutics. Consequently, the existential correlation between the sacred text and daily life have yet to be made in the Sikh world. Whereas Sikh scriptures have been radically open, and you all have suggested that, the community has been reticent to acknowledge and implement innovative ideas. But I suggest to you that the time has come to challenge old and new interpretations as a first step. A critique of the religious interpretations considering misogyny and responses to feminism forces us to examine the status quo with new understandings of the Sri Guru Granth Sahib Ji. Sikh scholar Peshora Singh poses many important and critical questions on the ability of any Sikh to understand the canon's oral and written exegesis based on the following estimate. He says, all interpretive activity is subject to 1. The cultural predisposition of the person who is interpreting it, the historical situation of the interpreter, the inevitable range or change in the modes of attention, and the nature of interaction between past and present. He further suggests that in the case of literary interpretation, one must approach the text without preconceived intention in order to explore the many possibilities of its meanings and confront the world in front of the text. And that is the confrontation that I want to discuss. So I take a very amic view as an insider. I'm a Punjabi, Canadian, Sikh, British Columbian feminist. I suggest that this immediate, personal and contemporary approach combats traditional interpretations that have neglected the feminine. So I want to take the past to the present. And this Sikh feminist lens allows me to analyze how women are represented and portrayed in comparison or in relation to men in the Sikh texts, in our practices in the Gurdwaras, and in the traditions we uphold in our homes. So feminist political and cultural and economic movements have worked to bring about equal rights and legal protection for women through the 4 waves of feminist history. And it grows the positionality of feminist thought. Positioning and analysis of Sikh sacred texts and codes of conduct through 3rd wave feminism seeks to challenge the simplistic binary oppositions and subsequent interpretations and translations present in the texts, in the practices of religious institutions like the Gurdwaras, and in everyday practices of Sikhi. In contemporary Sikh society, what we consider religious is constantly being challenged. But for Sikhs, what remains constant are the sacred texts. They continue to be the paramount teacher and the guide. Within this consistency, how can Sikh feminist needs for representation and identity building find expression in response to our own understanding and practice of our faith, how our institutions present our faith, and of the everyday Sikh symbols? We can all agree that there is a gendered nature of the exegesis of the Sri Guru Granth, with various practices within the Gurdwara, and demands in the part of the Rehat Maryada, or our code of conduct. These are all areas of exploration and understanding of the everyday ascribed values, and in the 5 symbols or articles of our faith, the Panch Kakar, to help us gain a gendered appreciation of how the scriptures, religious institutions, and the articles of faith resonate with the feminine. Guru Arjan Dev Ji took upon himself as an editor to produce the first canonical text, the Adi Granth, which was installed in Harmandir Sahib in 1604. Content and style were influenced by the standards of the time. Vishwara Singh states that in his book, the Guru Granth, Canon, Meaning and Authority, he says, giving consistent, metrical, poetic and linguistic structures provided an internal unity to the Adi Granth. And there were these 5 guiding principles. And those have stayed true through the other Gurus. There's a doctrinal consistency, and everybody talked about the balance of life, the ideal of the balanced life, a spirit of optimism, the Jagti Kala, the inclusive ideal, the egalitarian idea of who we are, and the concern of a distinctive Sikh identity. Guru Hargobind, Guru Tegh Bahadur and Guru Gobind Singh Ji later added to the Adi Granth, confirming it as his, and he confirmed it as his successor. The second rendition has come to be popularly known as the Guru Granth. Scholars have variously supported or challenged the several manuscripts of the Adi Granth and the Guru Granth as collections, branches, and independent textual traditions, which have emerged through the collaborative effort of Guru Arjan Dev and his associates in a linear or non-linear fashion. In a somewhat similar manner, the various translations, the transliterations, and of new, the transcreations of the Guru Granth by Western and Sikh scholars have been scrutinized, have been challenged, and have been supported or reframed by Sikh scholars and others. No full translation of the Guru Granth has been undertaken by a woman or women, and we can conjecture the reasons for this profound absence. This year, a book came out of Harvard. It's the poems from the Guru Granth Sahib by Nikki Gurinder Singh. It is the first book, first translation of parts of the Guru Granth Sahib by a woman. And so it's really interesting to read the translation, and I have marked off some passages to really understand how she has negotiated and found ways to interpret the Granth through a feminist lens. And I would encourage everybody to read the book. It's very easy to read because it's in poetry form, and it's a part of the Guru Granth, obviously not the full Granth. So the genesis of Sikh feminist thought, where does it start? I would say we can attribute it to the founder of the faith, Sri Guru Nanak Dev Ji, who was born in 1467, who revealed a new inclusive subject of inquiry about the nature of human existence as an individual, in society, and in the universe. He also revealed the theology of difference, whereby his understanding of the Creator's formless quality allowed for deliverance from caste discrimination, gender bias, or any social, cultural, religious hierarchy, and was a move away from the worship of idols. Nanak's third way, the Nanak Panth, or the path of Nanak that 9 other gurus followed, those teachings followed Nirgun Bhakti, defining a Sikh's devotional goal to become one with the One. The individual need to become one with the One. That's why we don't need the Granthis. It's omnipotent, it is omnipresent, it is fearless, and it is loving. But it has no form. It is Nirankar and is without attributes, without Nirgun. Critically important is the fact that Nanak does not invoke a contradistinction of the formless one, who has neither male nor female attributes, yet is completely subsumed within manifested attributes and is complete and whole. Nikki Guninder Singh writes, "It is critical that we do not put Guru Nanak's truly unique configuration of Ekonkar into any pre-existing molds. The standard translation is, there is one God. But it does not quite express the vastness and plenitude of our intimacy bursting forth in the original. Instead, it is an opening into limitless possibilities as envisioned by the founding Sikh Guru. And scholars and translators have selected and shaped Ekonkar into a male god." She further states that as the inclusive numeral shatters the dominance of male imagery, it creates a space for the divine to be experienced in new and important ways as an individual. As the opening words Ekonkar of the Guru Granth in the Mool Mantar, Singh suggests that the number Ik at the beginning of the Mool Mantar represents the unity of the ultimate reality, a concept which Guru Nanak interprets in monotheistic ways. So while affirming that there is a single supreme essence or supreme being, it departs from the idea of one and unity and corroborates with MacLeod's transliteration with the following male default androcentric colonized interpretation of the Guru Granth's verse. Sahib mera eko hai, pai eko hai. And the translation says, my master is the one. He is the one, brother, and he alone exists. In Gurmukhi colloquial terms, Sahib is a prefix or honorific given to a male of significance, of stature and status. But I suggest today that it can be accorded gender-free role of a teacher, a guru, rather than the word master or male. And the word pai, colloquially in this context, can generally be calling about a person, not only a man, and does not have to be the male brother, but rather those in the collective sangat, ashisare kathe. In the online SiriGuruGranth.org translation, the interpreters put in superfluous words like Lord and Master. My Lord, the Master, is one. And further they say, He is one and only one. O siblings of destiny, He is one, alone. And I don't understand how Pai can signify sibling of destiny. I would suggest that the honorific Sahib has masculine utility, but I suggest that in terms of Guru Granth's inclusive views in this regard, Sahib can be a teacher and a guide for the learner and can be inculcated as such. In analyzing the androcentric colonized mentality of the translations of the Guru, Nikki Guninder Singh says, Where the divine is the transcendent, metaphysical one, it is invariably translated into the Western idea of a monotheistic God. And the previous speaker was saying, what is God? And of course, we can't even define that. While global Sikhs in the diaspora have been attuned to their colonial history in the British Raj, they mostly rely on available translated texts for religious knowledge if the mother tongue has been lost, like Gurmukhi. However, many exegeses have had their academic study rooted in Western texts, and through that training have been influenced by Western religio-philosophical concepts. And Nikki Gurinder Singh says, English words imbued with Jewish and Christian meaning have come to dictate Sikh ideals. Key theological concepts from Western philosophical tradition alien to Sikh worldviews bury our scriptural translations and obstruct real affinity between Punjabi and English. She further suggests that the master-subject relationship of the British Empire continues to have credence in the diaspora. Younger generations of Sikhs in Canada and England and America are not familiar with the original verse. It is the master's voice that they are relating to. So key concepts as Ekunkar, slide 7. So key concepts such as Ekunkar are misconstrued or narrowly construed in translation, signifying a male god, commonly understood to mean there is one God, because it closely follows Satnam, commonly understood to mean his name is truth. Singh clarifies the two differences. There is one being, but is truth by name, versus the versions of Eastern and Western intellectuals. There is one God, eternal truth is his name. Does the interpretation of the Gur Shabad receive social justice when female subjectivities are ignored or are superimposed by patriarchal hermeneutics? For example, Gurcharan Singh Talib, Gopal Singh, Pritam Singh Chahil, all their translations of the Guru Granth, the union to the divine is through the feminine. But is the quest then now to see how the male can find his feminine side in order to complete the union? Doris Jacobish suggests that addressing the divine through the feminine voice leads one to conclude that there is a concerted effort to maintain the masculine identity of God. And I will read a translation. She knows her husband, Lord, to be always with her, enjoys his constant presence. O woman, you must walk in harmony with Guru's will. Night and day you should enjoy your husband, and you shall intuitively merge with the true one. Attuned to the Shabad, the happy soul brides are adorned with the true word of the Shabad. Within their own home, they obtain the Lord as their husband and love for the Guru. Upon her beautiful and cozy bed, she enjoys the love of her Lord. She is overflowing with treasure of devotion. It begs the question, does the Sikh male see himself represented in devotion as a female? Or is that negated to a subsumed and secondary female position only metaphorically? Nikki Gurinder Singh suggests it is imperative that a one-sided memory of Sikh sacred verse and its male application be immediately rectified. But what of the exegesis of a hyper-sexualized female representation as the devotee to a male lord? It is true, in the literature of the Gurus, female images serve as vital reminders of the transcendent one, and they are greatly valued for cultivating spirituality. But the minds of the Sikh community lack the ability to store and to deal with this rich symbolic data. The question then arises whether the current Guru Granth Sahib's translations provide the full benefit for women and for men. Ideally, a Sikh would be able to self-define the act of knowing by situating oneself within the history of personal experiences with one's faith. However, challenges of gender, power and privilege place Sikh women outside the realm of shared knowledge and experiences because of the hegemony of androcentric ideology in the practices of the Sikh faith in the Gurdwaras. For example, women are still not welcome to take active part in the Prakash of the Guru Granth Sahib at most Gurdwaras in India. They are not allowed to serve as Panch Pyare, 5 beloved ones who may be called upon for leadership, or carry any of the paraphernalia surrounding the scriptures. Within the exception of the 3 HO Sikhs who are converts to Sikhi who live and practice the faith outside India and who follow a particular kind of interpretation of the faith in the Gurudwaras abroad, narratives abound of women worshippers being pushed away and verbally being chastised for even getting too close to the holy scriptures, let alone being allowed to lend a shoulder to the palki at the time of Guru Granth's Prakash or Sukhasan. In the 1994 English translated Sikh Maryada that is posted for public consumption on the Shromani Gurudwara Prabandhak Committee SGPC Amritsar's website, it states, when the Guru Granth has to be taken from one place to another, Ardas will be performed. And it says he/she who carries the Guru Granth on his/her head should walk barefoot, but wearing of shoes if it is a necessity, no superstitions should be entertained. However, my observations of the daily practices of the Golden Temple in Amritsar show a visually and aggressively male presence of the Prakash of the Guru Granth Sahib, and a woman's close association is further forbidden by male worshippers as well as men, and yes, even some women who are not even Gurudwara workers actually performing the service. Additionally, Sikh women have not been allowed to perform Kirtan in the inner sanctum of the Guru Harmandir Sahib or other major Gurudwaras in India. In the Times of India, Balwinder Kaur Singh, chair of the Sikh Alliance of Women in UK, is quoted as follows. I have been saying for the last 20 years that Guru Nanak and our religion gave us equality. It is the men who have interpreted to control our religious scriptures. She suggests that women should be allowed to shoulder the palki at the early morning prakash or at Sukhasan without interference. The Guru Granth itself does not prescribe a code of conduct for Sikhs to do with ritual or practices, as it is a devotional text. This code is contained in the Sikh Maryada, the role of conduct to be followed by all Sikhs, and it does not prescribe that. So by applying a critical feminist lens to the issue of inclusion, a more nuanced and gendered critique provides a medium to question theories and knowledge by examining who is in the center. Germaine Green famously questioned how women can work to name their existence if there is so much falsehood around them. In view of this, Sikh feminists work to deliberately create interpretive spaces that introduce, incorporate, and inform misrepresented or underrepresented texts and question the false assumptions and insertions of gendered othering. Deconstructing the politics of power and difference in order to achieve the full potential for those that are relegated to the margins must be undertaken both in the Gurudwaras and in society so as to share in the power, knowledge of what Michael Foucault calls truth and untruth. New knowledge and truth can be created together to induce effects of power that constitute new objects of inquiry. If identities are no longer fixed as the premise of a political syllogism, and politics no longer understood as a set of practices derived from the alleged interests that belong to a set of ready-made subjects, a new configuration of politics surely can emerge. It is exactly this promise of a new configuration that motivates the need for inclusion of Sikh feminist thought and practice in both the practices of the faith and in its current interpretation. 5 centuries ago, the Guru started theologizing the Guru Granth, for which there has been no discourse of feminist possibilities because it has only been male elites who have served as its intermediaries. Their one-sided androcentric approach has dominated interpretations and commentaries. So such is the interpretation of the Guru Granth. Sikh feminist thought has not been debated, it has not been argued, it has not been developed in a robust manner either in the Darbar Hall, in discourse, or in text in recent times. There has been academic work developing in the field. So while there's an acknowledgement that the entire Guru Granth is derived from a male pen, it suggests that the feminine voice speaks for all humanity. Sikh scriptures opens out the definition of man. The Sikh view is that a separation between male and female denies the wholeness of Ek Omkar. A feminist translation of the text has the promise of knowledge that hitherto has not been fully explored. However, it is not for the sake of translation by feminists or others that we want to re-signify this work, but rather for the purpose of giving new meaning to a familiar Sikh scripture with feminist modes of inquiry. I want to end with this quote. Judith Butler writes, "The point is not to assimilate foreign or unfamiliar notions of gender or humanness into our own, as if it is simply a matter of incorporation of alienness into an established lexicon. Cultural translation is also a process of yielding our most fundamental categories, that is, seeing how and why they break up, require resignification when they encounter the limits of an available esteem, what is unknown, and what is not yet known." So I'll end here by saying that the discursive practice of resignification will produce an ongoing deeper engagement with the Sikh faith, for Sikh women, and for all of us who adhere to the faith and seek to understand it. We hope for a more inclusive faith, for an interpretation that is practical, that helps us live our lives on our terms. Vaheguru Ji Ka Khalsa, Vaheguru Ji Ki
Thank you to Dr. Bains for delivering such a thought-provoking speech.